special guest host Randy Patterson. And of course, we still have to put up with DC, but it's all good. We're not going to tell him that.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't see me. So that's good.
All right, I got us live on YouTube. We are
I
good
don't
to
see y'all
go.
yet. So bear with me. I'm the one running the freaking thing, and it won't. It
That's why
delays
we have
me.
so many technical issues. See?
You need to start running it. All right. We good to go?
We're good. We're up. We're live. We're rolling. By the
Here-
way,
Here's a question: is this '80s metal because all the guys who are playing metal are in their '80s now? Is that why? Because
We're
it's
getting
getting
there.
it's getting there, man.
Yes,
I
we
mean,
are getting there.
it's getting
We
there.
are getting there.
This is not a joke, but I did meet Keith Richards, gastroenterologist, at a party. Now I know that sounds like a joke. That sounds like I know it sounds like a joke, right?
Oh
But
my
but
gosh.
seriously, my buddy who's a guitar collector, plastic surgeon, nice to have it all in one thing.
Yeah.
He opened up he opened up a new office in Midtown. He was throwing a party, and at the party were all these like very famous plastic surgeons and blah blah doctors in his office. And I walk in, and he says to me, "See that guy in the corner? That's Keith Richards, gastroenterologist." And he goes, "You should go and talk to him." And I went, "I can't talk to him because it's the hippo oath, you idiot. I'm not supposed to know that that's Keith Richards' doctor. So what you have just violated the hippo oath, right? I'm not." He says he knows who you are. Just walk over to him. So I walk over to him and I go, "Hey man, I hear you're Keith's gastroenterologist. That's like the funniest shit I ever heard. Like I never thought I'd hear Keith Richards and gastroenterology in the
In
same
the same
sentence."
word,
right.
same sentence, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
said, "Can I ask you a question?" He said, "You can ask me anything you want, but I can't answer it." And I said, "I'll bet you can. I got one question and I'll bet you can't answer it." And he goes, "Okay, give it a shot." And I said, "Here it goes. Are even you amazed?" And he went, "Actually, yes, I am amazed." And I went, "Thank you very much.
There you go.
I'm done. I'm out. See you."
I'm out. Yeah. Drop the mic and walk.
Drop the mic. I did
Yeah.
it. I got an
Yeah.
answer. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Oh
But-
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, actually, though, this is all. Do you want to hear another? It's a funny. It's actually
Yeah.
Keith.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
definitely.
Keith lives in Westport, Connecticut. With
Yeah.
his family. I kind of people know it. And a friend of mine lives in Westport. Was telling me that one night they were eating at a local restaurant, and Keith was there with Patty. And just having dinner. And at another table, a woman was celebrating her like 60th birthday. So Keith thought it'd be funny if he went to the kitchen, got the cake, and presented it to the woman. So Keith gets up and he goes to the kitchen and brings the cake out to the woman. And the woman has no idea who he is and says, "Thank you for the cake." And the daughter goes, "Mom, that's Keith Richards." She goes, "Who's that?"
Oh
Member of the
no.
Rolling Stones, Mom. He's a waiter for you. And I think Keith had a great sense of humor about it, because
Sure.
it's rare that people don't know.
Yeah.
Although how somebody that looks like a white mom's Mabley is not like, I mean, I love Keith, but man,
The only way that would have been funnier is if it was Mick who had done that. And not,
well, yeah, you know what though, and to your point, and this is another true story. I have so many of these stories. I was flying back in 2012 from England, and I happened to be on the same plane as Mick Jagger, and they were playing at the Barclays Center. I had no idea he was in first class. I was in business. Didn't matter. So because I'm was it? I have like credentials to go through like really fast, global entry, right? So I go through really fast, and Mick is standing at the passport desk talking to an official, and the guy's like, "So what are you here for?" And Jagger is not going like, "I'm Mick Jagger." He went, "A concert." Like, I'm looking back going, this idiot doesn't just Mick Jagger. And so another passport guy, I think, noticed it and yelled out, "Hey Billy, it's fucking Mick Jagger. Step goddamn passport." And the Jagger's, credit. He was like, totally cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
He wasn't being a prick or anything like that.
Yeah,
He was like,
yeah.
"I'm Mick Jagger. Yeah, I'm here for a concert." "Oh, really?
That's really.
Taylor Swift? You going to see Taylor Swift?"
Oh, the Swifties.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. So hi guys. Hey, man. See all my platinum records there, right?
I see
Oh,
that, man.
man.
That's awesome.
That's
That's
a digitally created wall, bro. No, it's not.
fantastic.
Hey,
That's
I was
the
gonna
sum
say,
total. That's a sum total of a lot of work. I can
yes.
tell you.
That
Absolutely.
And the
Absolutely.
amazing part is, your performing is just the tip of the iceberg of what you do. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
everything else, the producing and all. I mean, man, it's just
Fantastic.
like, wow, you
Yeah.
don't stop.
Well, we retired in 2016. I have a podcast. I write for several magazines. I have a book out, and I do motivational speaking for corporations, which most people don't know. But you hire me to give lectures to corporations, finance groups, insurance groups, banking groups, and I teach them the twisted method of reinvention, which is, by the way, the irony of that, just to give you the context, is that I am hired to speak to people with degrees and business degrees and PhDs and all that shit, and they're taking advice from a former drug dealer, former drug addict, high school dropout rock and roll musician. And as I say to them, boy, you guys missed out on all the fun. So,
were any of those companies big pharma by any chance?
yeah, for all I know, they may as well have been. I actually have spoken to some of the craziest finance groups in the world, and you know what? Truthfully, when they hire someone like me, yes, I have a book, and yes, the band did make it because we worked really, really hard. And the book teaches the twisted method of reinvention. I took the word twisted, which TWISTED, tenacity, wisdom, inspiration, stability, trust, excellence, and discipline. And this is what I discuss.
Wow.
Which, by the way, is common to any business. Has nothing to do with rock and roll. Any business, that's how you succeed. I think what happens is because they don't know me, and the assumption is a heavy metal musician must have the IQ of a donut. Which means that that if we were making a movie with Stallone and Schwarzenegger, it would be called Duh. The bar is set so freaking low that if I say a 3-syllable word, I'm a Mensa member. You get that? Like so I win just by default.
Right.
I just win. I just say a couple of fancy words. Well, he's a smart guy. Damn, he's a smart guy. Yeah, he said anti-disestablishmentarianism. What the hell is that? It's not like we're not going to take it. God bless. We're not going to take it. That's all I got to say.
Yes.
God bless it. That's why I don't have to dress like a middle-aged transvestite anymore. Okay.
Well, it'd be in style now. Come on.
That song makes so much money. I don't have to dress like a middle-aged transvestite.
Right. You could lead our military then if you were doing that. So
Well, you want to know something? Like, you guys know that, right? Like, they made Dee testify in Washington, do the PMRC hearings, right? And they accused us of destroying the moral fabric of America. This is for real. They passed laws to keep us out of certain cities called anti-rock laws. Absolutely true story. This is back in the 80s. Our videos are all over the place, and all these moral people decided that we are the worst thing that ever happened, like the way Elvis was the worst thing and Chuck Berry was the worst. Now we're the worst thing, and I have these born again Christian groups showing up, and cops are harassing us all over the South. Like, no kidding. We get harassed, almost arrested. D got arrested for obscenity and all that stuff. Flash forward to like 2003, and the United States government asks us if we would do a USO tour for the troops.
Wow.
So we go to South Korea. It was one of the greatest experiences of our lives, right? It was totally great. But the thing is, I had all these 5-star generals who could not wait to get into the photo, right? And I'm thinking, like, 20 years earlier, let's lock these punks up. Right? Now it's like, we're not going to take it, man. This general's going, I want him in my base. No, I want him in my base. No, I want him in my base. And man, God, those soldiers are just absolutely amazing. The life they lead in South Korea, because it's a flashpoint. It's a scary flashpoint.
Sure.
So when they take you to Panmunjom, they take you to the village where it all was right there, like right there. And you're the guest of the government. So they take you in, and you're facing the North Koreans at gunpoint. Everyone's got their guns drawn, staring at each other. And there's the 38th parallel is right in front of you. You've heard about it. You read about it.
Yeah.
There it is. It's about a foot wide, and you can walk right up to it. But if you cross over it, or they cross over it, someone gets shot. Right.
Wow.
So it's the most surreal experience you could ever ever face, because you know that those guys who are located up at Camp Casey, which is up there, if there is a war, they're the first ones that get it. Like
Sure.
those guys, I think what happens is when you do your year up there, you just pray to not be told that this is the day that the North is coming to
Right.
the South,
Oh my God.
because everyone's going to die and everyone knows it. So they do party like crazy. And we played for them and they partied like crazy. And they were really great people. And the soldiers there were so damn nice. But it's scary when you're confronted with that
Yeah.
kind of a reality.
Yes.
And here's the crazy part. You ready for this? There's a 3-hole golf course up there. And it's called I'm not a joke. It's called the world's most dangerous golf course.
I bet.
And it's got a plaque and it says Sports Illustrated, world's most dangerous golf course. And you can tee off in it, but if your ball goes over a fence, it hits a landmine. So
Oh, gee.
you don't like a roadie, send them out to get your ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, can you go out there and get my ball? It's unbelievably surreal, but playing for the troops, I was a 60s kid and I demonstrated against the war. And what I've learned over the years, because we played so many bases, I met so many guys, is that the kids who join, you can't blame them. They're doing what they're supposed to do for their government. They're doing what they're supposed to do for America. It's not them. It's the generals that send them in these situations, the politicians that do it, but you can't take it out on the troops. These people sacrifice their lives. And now when I see them in airports, I stop and go, thank you. That's all I do.
Yeah.
I go, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen on that one. Yeah.
I know it.
Amen.
I understand it. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there.
No,
Ever
fantastic.
run into these people at an airport, man. You don't know the sacrifice these people
That's
make.
right.
Exactly. Yes.
And in New York City, we don't have that. You understand?
Mm.
Nashville, they do. Montana, New York City people don't join the army. They just don't. So it's not like you see guys and go, "Hey, man, I just came back from so and so." No one here,
Mm.
for whatever reason. Whether you're in college or whatever, but you just don't. You don't see it. But when you travel America.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time in Montana. We have friends who have a place out there.
Mhm.
We're always out at West Yellowstone. And that's the hotbed of, patriotic military stuff, and you meet these guys all the time. And they're great people. And they buy my records. That's why I like them.
There you go.
There you go. Yes.
Randy, you're up, man. You got a question?
Yeah, I was just with all this that you've experienced, and I mean, not just with Twisted Sister, but the just all the other work that you have done and are doing. And I've asked other artists this on my show. Be curious to know your answer, and that is, if you were made music czar, if our president said, "JJ, you're it, man. Fix this music business." Number one, do you think it's broken? And number two, what would you do to fix it?
So at the risk of sounding like my dad, who thought everything before 1947, after 1947 sucked, like my father made it really simple. 1947 sucked from then on in. Everything sucked. My dad used to go, "It's all baby, baby, baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah." That was my father's ability to throw the entire world into the toilet. It is a truism that if you don't understand the music and you don't care to understand the music, you don't know the music. So if you know it and you get it, great. Okay. So I say I'm a Grateful Dead fan. People who hate the Dead, they don't get it. If people get it, they like it. People who don't. The problem with trying to come up with a generalization about the music today sucks, right? The problem with that statement is that to a 15-year-old, it doesn't suck. To a 15-year-old, they're listening to what they're getting the same way we were listening to what we were getting. And don't make a mistake by thinking that we were getting stuffing on our own free will. It was manipulative. The companies knew what they were giving us, and we bought it. And yes, there was a golden age, and yes, it was fabulous. But my daughter, when she was, she's 30 years old, when she was like 9 years old, or 8 years old, she came into my office one day and she said, "Daddy, I want you to listen to this." And she played me like Britney Spears doing Satisfaction or something like that, and I almost threw up, you almost throw up. And I said, "This is a teachable moment." And I said, sweetheart, I'm not going to play you considered the greatest rock and roll single in history. I play her the original version. And she listens to it and she goes, that sucks, Dad. And I said to myself, if I kill you now, there's a good chance that a jury of my peers will consider it justifiable infanticide.
Right.
Like, well, of course you had to kill her.
Well,
You know,
where'd
so
you bury the body?
so after 4 years of tasering her, she finally got with the program. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
You're a
Queen,
good dad.
Beatles, Stones. So
Right.
the point is that I can't dictate to young people what they are being given to, because I had the greatest. I was 10 years, what you listen to between the ages of 10 and 20 defines what you listen to for the rest of your life. That's just the way it is. I had the Beatles between 10 and 10. I had the perfect time. I was born in 52. Beatles came in 63. I was 11 years old. They broke up when I was 20. I had the golden age. I had the golden age of the Fillmore East. I was able to go see Led Zeppelin when it cost $2 to see them. And I saw many, many times as an opening band. And I could see these groups in little clubs, not arenas, in clubs, whether it's Jimi Hendrix or whether it was the Grateful Dead or the Rolling Stones or Leslie West and Mountain or 10 Years After or Blind Faith. I saw all these bands on a weekly basis at the age of 16 for $2, $3. You go to the park at Central Park, you see them for $1.50. That's a golden age. And I sound like my dad. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be able to say, if you think this is okay, I don't hear it. I don't hear it. You hear it. You get it. And am I supposed to get it? That's the other question I'm also having too. Am I supposed to get it? Because you know what? My parents didn't get it. And I'm 71 years old, right? Which means that my musical taste block has been created and is cemented. And for me to like something different takes a lot of work. Someone has to really point me in this direction. There's a million bands out there. There's a million. You can't keep up with it. Someone says, listen to this song. Back in our day, it was easy. The songs were picked out by the A&R guys of the label. It was pitched to the radio stations. You heard the song on the radio. You went to the concerts. Pretty simple. The road to it was easy. It's not easy anymore. There's a billion portals out there with a billion different things. The good news is anybody can make a record, and the bad news is anybody can make a record, which means there's a lot of shit out there. Right. There's a lot of and here's another thing, guys, and this is maybe the most depressing statistic of all. So follow me on this. When I was 17, all of my heroes, Beatles, Stones, Who, Zepp, Floyd, Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Bob Dylan, none of them were older than 27. Think about this for a second. None of my heroes were older than 27. So I say to somebody, name me a rock and roll star now who's younger than 27. Just name one for me. All they do is they go, well, I went to see the Eagles. I went to see this. I said, yeah, these guys are all 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. Where are the 25-year-old rock stars?
Right.
And the answer to that question is there are hardly any of them, because they're not hearing what we're hearing, and they're coming up with something different. You go to the music stores, you go, where's the Marshall stacks? Well, no one buys big amplifiers anymore. It's a generational thing. It's a sociological thing. So I don't necessarily sit there and go, oh, woe is me. When's the great rock and roll band come out? But I have a different take on it, guys. And my take on it is we had our time. We had an unbelievable 50 years of extraordinary music. That's longer than almost any genre lasts. Genres don't last 50 years.
Right.
We had 50 years, and it's great. And it's always there, and it's easily accessible. God knows. Just take your phone, push a button. You got it all, right? You got your fingertips. So I don't necessarily go, woe is me, and how come, when's the next great band coming along? Because maybe it's not coming along. Maybe it's not meant to come along. Maybe something else will come along. I don't necessarily sit there and go, it all sucks, because now I sound like my dad, and I don't want to sound like my dad. So that's my point. I can talk about all day long, that I stood 2 feet from Robert Plant at the Fillmore when Zeppelin opened for Iron Butterfly, and I did. And I saw Jimi Hendrix. I have my album collection's extensive. I went through my album collection. And I said, how many shows did I see that were turned into live albums? 19 shows that I saw were turned into famous live albums. I was at Band Rock of Ages at the Academy of Music. I was at Martha Hoople at the Uris Theater live. I was at Jimi Hendrix. I was at the Fillmore when he played with Band of Gypsies. I was, God knows every Grateful Dead concert eventually will be a live album. Okay.
Yes.
But I saw the Dead 27 times.
Wow.
Back in 1968, 69, 70, Jerry Garcia gave me a tab of acid at the Fillmore E's. He did.
and you remember it.
And well, here's the thing, right? I saw the Dead 27 times, and 26 times I was on acid. On the 27th time, I went straight, and it was the worst band I ever heard in my life. And I made that joke in a documentary. I made that joke. I said that joke, but it's true. I saw them 27 times. I made that statement in a document in our Twisted documentary, and I get an email from a guy. He goes, "Hey man, so what you said about the Grateful Dead?" Signed Justin Kreutzmann, and I'm thinking, Bill Kreutzmann's the drummer for the Grateful. I went, "You wouldn't be related to the drummer?" And he goes, "It was my dad." And they go, "I'm so sorry." And he goes, "No, man, that was the funniest shit I ever heard in my life." So, anyway, the point being is, I was at an age at a time in New York City where you had accessibility to the greatest music on earth every weekend. You didn't think twice about it. It was no big deal. 10 years after, it's playing at the Fillmore this weekend. Jethro Tull's playing next weekend. Stones are playing 3 nights at the Garden.
Wow.
Hendrix is playing over here. This is over here. I saw Zepp 4 times in 1969 because I did. And I saw the tickets were $3, $1.50, and $4. Okay.
Wow.
And I can talk about this shit and make people sick, like people my age, like people who didn't live in New York City to have this luxury. But that's my dream. That's my experience. Never be duplicated again. It won't happen like this. I don't know what young bands do anymore for inspiration, because I could go to all these shows all the time and get inspired. And I would go see the Allman Brothers on a Friday night and then come home at 4:00 in the morning and pretend I was Dickie Betts or Dwayne Allman, or go see Eric Clapton at a club. There's a little restaurant on Ganos on 70th Street. I saw a private party there. Free opened. Free played on the floor. There was 12 people in the room. Free. They played on the floor, and then Clapton, Stevie Winwood, Dr. John, Rick Gretsch, Jim Keltner, Delaney, and Bonnie jammed for 3 hours. To me and my friend David and about 10 people.
Wow.
Or I walk into a club and there's Muddy Waters playing, and I can go on the stage and sit on his amplifier. I mean, these are experiences that are unbelievable. But then you talk about them, and it's like, well, when I was a boy, gasoline was 2 cents a gallon, and we had to walk. We didn't have shoes back then, and milk was only 10 cents, and then it just winds up sounding lame. So I don't bother. I tell you guys because I know it makes you sick. But,
Yeah.
My first concert was Elvis, and it was $8.50 in Phoenix. But genre aside, JJ, I even regardless of the genre, what about the business end of it itself? I mean, because it's changed so much.
Yeah, it has. And by the way, the business sucked back then. The business look, the record business is just a bunch of legalized thievery. My God. I mean, I can tell you because I've signed the contracts. I know the contracts. I know the business. I know the people in the business. I've seen it all, and I've read it all, and I knew all of the crap that was going to go on before it went on, and I expected to see what it was going to say. There's no golden age of that. The labels have changed. Things have changed. The construct of the contracts have changed. But here's the deal. I know a lot of bands that go, I don't want a record label. I'm doing it myself. I can get it out there. I can distribute it. I can sell my t-shirts. I'm not going to have to be beholden to some guy unless you want to walk up and give me a check for $1 zillion. And by the way, here's the one big difference I will say between what it's like today to get a record deal and what it was like in my day. In my day, you had to actually be good. Today, you just have to have a big following. So if you're an A&R guy, right? You're an A&R guy and you have to sign a band, and someone comes to you with 10 bands, the first thing you're going to do is go on their Instagram page, TikTok, and you're going to look at their followers, and you will sign the band with the biggest following, whether you like them or you don't like them. That's the problem. And so that's sad. That is a sad fact, but it's a testament to people who work hard to build up their following. And the actors say the same things to me. I know professional actors who say you go in for a role, you go in for a part, you read your part, then they go online, they look at your Instagram, they look at your TikTok, and they will hire the actor with the larger profile. How do you like that? How sucky is that? What a drag to learn your craft and have to know that you're being judged by how many followers you have.
Right.
And the following issue, what really blew the following issue apart back 20 years ago, you had like 100,000 people saw your Facebook. Wow, that's amazing. Like amazing. And then the number went up to like 200,000, and then Carla Rae Jepsen comes out with Call Me Maybe, and she hits something like 2 million. And that just screws everything up because now that becomes the new plateau. And
Try
then,
to
you know,
reach, yeah.
and this keeps going. And then Psy comes out with Gangnam Style, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. 2.3 billion hits. And you go, that's what I need to do it. And then Despacito comes out 3 years later, and it's 4 billion hits. I'm sitting there thinking, man, if I had to do that, if I had to fight that, if I had to do something, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know that I do know this because I tell this to bands all the time. When bands ask me for advice, you know, and they go, hey, man, and I say, listen, you're asking the wrong person for advice, because if I was 20, I'd be seeing the world differently than I am seeing it now, because I have this other history. Okay. But if I was 20, I would look around at all the other bands who are 20 years old and say, what are they doing? How are they doing it? I will follow their template the same way we did when we were 20. What did you do? You started a band, you played in bars. The idea was to draw more people. How'd you do that? Well, maybe because they're playing Smoke on the Water and we're not. Or maybe they're doing Zeppelin and we're not. So we start playing Zeppelin. It's kind of no different. You know, you kind of look around your playing field and you go, okay, I get that. Look, the Beatles were a copy band. The Stones were a copy band. Everyone starts out learning their profession. This is a truism, though, crazy statistic as it is. When I ask a 20-year-old kid, how long have you been in your band? And they go, 2 years. And I go, how many shows have you played in 2 years? And they go, oh, man, we played like about 50, 60 shows. Like, that's a big deal. Like, I go, 50, 60, 45-minute sets you've played in 2 years. Like, that's great, right? And then I said, okay, well, here's the bad news, my friend. Twisted Sister's first show was March 17th, 1973. And we ended the first version of the band on Labor Day weekend, 1975. Between that 30-month period of time, we played 3,425 45-minute shows. Okay? 3,245 minutes. Now, that's how you learn not to suck. You play, but you know what? Drinking age was 18. You know what? 18-year-olds back then in shop class, you know, 15-year-olds got in with, because how easy was it to make fake proof? Everybody had fake proof. So the clubs were gigantic. You know, people don't understand, maybe you guys don't understand, the New York tri-state club scene. Club scene was humongous because the drinking age was 18 and 15-year-olds were going there. So consequently, we played in bars doing cover material, and the bars held up to 5,000 people.
Wow.
Which means you really learned your craft, because you had to learn how to play to that many people, which meant you came up through the bar scene, little clubs to bigger clubs to bigger clubs. And then meanwhile, you sent your demos out to get signed, and you were rejected constantly. You know, we were turned down more times than a bed sheet in a whorehouse, and we've come back more times. We've come back more times than Freddy Krueger, you know. I tell people all the time, you know, that learning curve does not exist anymore. So when a 20-year-old asked me, I said, man, here's what you do. Walk around, look at all the other 20-year-old guys who are in bands, find out the ones who are more successful than you, and figure out what they're doing and copy it for a while until you figure it out on your own, because that's how you do it. So the whole scene is very different, but in truth, everything is different. Think about this. In 1972, when I started Twisted, I was 20 years old, right? When a kid asks me for advice, he's asking a 71-year-old man for advice. If I was 20 and I asked a 70-year-old musician for advice, and believe me, in my neighborhood, I had a lot of professional guys who were on the Tonight Show, played in orchestras, you know, like professional musicians, sax players, like in the Upper West Side, we knew them. If I asked a 70-year-old guy for advice, which I did not do, that person would have said to me, John, I was born in 1902. And my first band was before World War I, and we played back in some woman in a hotel lounge, right, in a ballroom. Has nothing to do with you wearing women's clothing playing through Marshall Stacks, my friend. It's a whole nother world you're in. I don't get your world. I mean, good luck wearing women's clothing and playing through Marshalls, but that ain't my world, right? So think about that, guys. Think about that for a second. Think about that. Every generation brings with it its own different set of formulas. Some guy wants to get into radio these days. It's going to be different than the guys who got into radio 20, 30 years ago.
So
same shit.
Yeah.
JJ, we have Barbie Marley 722 has joined us on YouTube, and she says she loves JJ, and she was so happy when you and Dee both liked her video where it was her as Dee Snyder. So
I'm sure. Well, D. A lot of people do videos looking like D, which means you're looking like Sarah Jessica Parker dipped in a vat of acid. And and
That's classic. I'm sorry.
And to D's credit, and to D's enormous credit, that's how I introduce him on stage. I go, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the man. He's not Christina Aguilera's bad dream. He's not Bill Miller's bad dream. He looks like Sarah Jessica Parker dipped in a vat of acid. And why anybody would want to look like that, I have no clue. But to his credit, he has an enormously phenomenal sense of humor, and he's a great performer. But yeah, I mean, we get a lot of that stuff, and we compliment them. We do. I mean, I like to promote people, and when they send the stuff in, they never believe it's us. Like if you respond to it, they go, "Is this really you?"
Yeah.
I go, "Actually, it really is," and thank you very much. We appreciate the support and sustaining it. Listen. The reason why our songs are in so many movies and so many soundtracks and so many commercials is we promote the consistent performance of "We're Not Going to Take It," because you got to fight through the malaise of 200 million songs being dumped into the ether, into the world every year, every day. So how do we keep it going? Dee and I talked about this a long time ago about supporting as many independent movie makers. Let them use it cheap. Like, just keep it out there. Make sure it's out there so that people know. And that song is one of the biggest anthems in the history of heavy metal. It is the most licensed song in the history of heavy metal.
Yeah,
that's a legacy for us.
Yeah. I mean,
to kind of piggyback on that, I was going to ask you this about that episode. It may have been 2 episodes of Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Where they really highlighted the Twisted Sister band. And I was just kind of interested in what your opinion of that was.
Well, we get contacted by the producers of the movie studios or whatever, and they want to license the song. And we don't own the song rights. Most bands do not own their song rights, but we re-recorded the song and have our own master of it. So that's how we make the bulk of our money by our masters. But to me, it's an honor. But I have to tell you, we have partnered with over 40 major corporations, and we've been in over 200 movies and TV shows, and game shows, and and video games. So when someone says, "What about this one?" I go, I have to remember which what was in it and what we did with it. But I can just tell you that we licensed it and we got paid, right? So that's the good news.
Yeah.
And no one ripped us off, but we did it to keep it out there.
Yeah.
We want to keep I Want to Rock and We're Not Going to Take It are staples on classic rock radio. And
it's got to feel good about this too, that it's getting out to all these new generations of people.
Yes. That's exactly what I was going to say, because I know years ago when I was still in the classroom, I'm an admin now, but when I was still in the classroom, I would play some 80s rock and I played some Twisted Sister, and the kids were just like, "Who is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, come on now, I got to introduce you."
Very
to
curious.
And now
absolutely.
you see, and DC, you can attest to this. I see kids now walking around with the throwback shirts for Twisted Sister, Def Leppard, ACD.
Right, sure,
absolutely.
It's just amazing the staying power of those songs in the music.
Amazing.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something else that I'm very proud of. If you were to ask a 10-year-old kid randomly, sing a Kiss song, an AC/DC song, a Judas Priest song, he wouldn't. But if you ask him to sing "We're Not Going to Take It," the kid will sing "We're Not Going to Take It," and that is a truism. That happens to be a truism.
Absolutely.
And by the way, that is in no way knocking those other bands like Kiss, AC/DC, Judas Priest. These are titanic bands. Sold more records than us, like super famous. However, we've managed to make sure that "We're Not Going to Take It" and "I Want to Rock" are so identifiable that the kids know those tracks and can sing along with those tracks. But you know what? To your point, in 1973, when all of us started, I mean, AC/DC started in 73, Twisted started in 73, Aerosmith started in 73, Kiss started in 73, Priest started in 73. If you asked any of us in 73 how long we were going to last, we would have said 5 years, maybe 10 on the outside. The fact that it's 50 years later is absolutely mind-blowing to me.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, you should know this, that 40 years to the month, so February of 1984, we were recording We're Not Going to Take It, I Want to Rock right now. Stay
Wow.
Hungry was released in May.
How
So
special is that?
we was
That is
recording it.
awesome.
We were recording it right now 40 years ago. And when I think back 40 years, if you had said to me 40 years later the song's going to be played all over, I'd go, yeah, right, take some more LSD or something. No way. And so it is. It is. So people who hate my band, too bad. Guess what? We win. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're
You're here to
All the way
stay.
to the bank.
Here
Okay.
to stay. Yeah.
I don't care if you hate me. You're playing me. So that's the end of that.
Yeah.
So
And you
That's right.
continue making those trips to the bank from it. So it's a
Yeah,
win.
exactly.
well, it's what it's called in the music industry. It's called mailbox money. That's what they call it.
Oh.
And
Okay.
and but by the way, I mean, look, let's be real. I mean, Kiss has mailbox money. AC/DC has mailbox money. I mean, these are because our catalog sells consistently.
Mhm.
By the way, if you're hearing sirens, it's not because I'm in the witness protection program. It's because I am in New York City. Okay, just understand the fact that it's only one siren is a shocker.
Yeah.
They're
So
waiting for their donuts is what it
Yes.
is. So
Yeah.
and I'll tell you what else too, which is amazing. You go to South America. I will say Argentina, unbelievable fans, like unbelievable. Buenos Aires is incredible. Brazil, unbelievable. The kids there are really young. Do you know our number one Spotify country is Mexico?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we're huge in Mexico, and in South America, the young kids, and when I say young, I mean 17 to 22. Like in America, we have a big fan base, meaning they're big, like big fan base. But in South America, those kids revere Kiss and AC/DC and Twisted Sister and Motley Crue and Judas Priest, like it's a religion for them, and they are so emotionally invested in the bands. And when you play down there, you can almost cry because you see how universal music is.
Yeah.
Music is universal, and metal is universal. And what pisses me off about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in general, there's a lot to be pissed off about, is that the 80s provided, especially all those bands I just listed, they provided entertainment for millions of people around the world and don't get the respect for keeping the business alive when the business was dying. We kept the concert business alive and yet don't get the respect for the hard work that we all put in. Yes, we sold the records. Yes, the songs are famous. But let me tell you something, man. I now know, I've seen it with my own eyes. I've played in 40 countries. I've headlined 40 countries. I've seen the eyes of these kids. We did something special that we didn't even know we were doing at the time. And that legacy is something to be extremely proud of. And guys like you who keep that alive is wonderful for me to know that you guys do that. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, growing up, and I mean, in DC, we can talk. I mean, in '86, we were seniors in high school, so that's kind of, and it's like you said, that's kind of our box, And Twisted Sister was such a major part of that.
Yeah.
And the thing for me is, even to this day, when you hear certain songs, you think back about what was going on in those times or whatever, or if you're having a bad day, you just start rocking out. So I mean, it's just amazing how those songs continue to do that forever.
DH, I have got to give a shout out to one of our buddies that we went to high school with. JJ will love this story. Jimmy Beacom.
Yep.
Was a massive Twisted Sister fan. So when we did the cruising thing and all that, he had that cassette and we played it over and over and over and over. That was it for him. That was the group he wanted to hear, and we heard it for hours on end, hours on end,
Yeah.
hours on end.
but it never gets
So,
old.
No, it does
You know,
not.
I would do the same thing, you know, in the
Yeah,
car, you know, pop it
yeah.
in.
But
Never
that's
gets old.
memories to me
Yeah.
on those cruise nights. And I knew what Beacom, that's what we called him, last name. Beacom was going to have that cassette all night long playing over and over and over.
A matter of
Special
fact,
times.
I
Yeah.
was looking through some cassettes today because I still have an old cassette player.
Yeah.
And earlier today, before the show, I had my Twisted Sister
There you
cassette
go.
in,
There
jamming.
you go.
And I mean, you
So-
talking about a kickback, just listening to it on the cassette.
Well, you know what?
Special
I still got my CD long box containers. Remember the long box?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so the ones, you know, I have them just because people go, "What is that?"
Yeah.
I go, that's how they used to package this crap, you know, back before.
Yes.
Right.
So I got to tell you this: my
Sure.
brother was a school teacher, you know, for 30 years. And my joke in my family, I would say to my brother, I said to my brother, you know, every night I try to undo in 2 hours everything you've done in 8 hours during the day.
Oh, wow.
That is
Wow.
my stated goal in life: is to
Yeah.
undo everything that you've ever done. You know.
Well, bless him for his service. I'm in
Yes,
year,
thank
I'm
you.
teaching, this is my year 31.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. My brother
awesome
survived.
for him.
My brother survived 30 years in the New York City school system.
You darn right.
Wow.
You know,
I
And he
can't
was
imagine.
and
I
you want to
can't
know
imagine.
something? He was a great teacher.
Yeah.
And people will come up to me sometimes and go, I had your brother, right? Because my last name was Segal, but it's no longer, but it was. And they go, we had Mr. Segal, and he was a great teacher, you know. And I said to my brother and I once had this kind of crazy philosophical conversation, which actually opens my book, Twisted Business, which is available on Amazon in case anybody is listening. You know, you can buy my book. And
There
the
you
book
go.
opens with a discussion I'm having with my brother. And the discussion was, here's plug.
There we
There you
go.
go.
So
Twisted business.
Twisted
Yep.
business. So the discussion was, my brother said to me one day, he goes, how do you run life the way you run it? I don't get it. And I went, what do you exactly mean? Like, how do I play guitar? Like, what are you asking me? He goes, no, I don't get your life. He goes, you know, I graduated college. I wanted to have like a civil service job. I wanted to have a career. I became a teacher, and I thought if I was good, I would last 10, 20, 30 years. I have a pension, which is exactly what I did. And then I got a private school job for 10 years, and I did that. And he goes, you know, my life was pretty like this, you know?
Yeah.
But you, at the age of 15, you start dealing drugs. And then you become like a drug dealer and a drug addict and blah, blah, blah. And then you stop all that. And then you join the transvestite rock band. And then you start for 10 years, and then you become one of the biggest bands in the world. And then just at that level, everything comes crashing down. You get divorced, you lose everything, you file for bankruptcy, you got nothing. You have to go to your friend owns a pool hall, you manage a pool hall, and you remarry and you have a kid, and then your kid develops an eye disease, which is terrible, and you wind up having to have a heart operation, and you start working at a stereo store, and then all of a sudden you produce a band called Seven Dust, and they go climbing up, and you become very successful as a manager and a producer, and then that whole thing goes to shit. Your second wife leaves you. You have to have a second heart operation. You lose everything again. And then just when it's all down the shitter, the band reforms because of 9/11. We did a benefit for the widows and orphans of the New York City
Yep.
Police and Fire Department because we were
Yep.
all affected by it, as most people are in
Sure.
New York City.
Right.
We all know someone who died or
Yeah.
knew someone who died. Horrible. And they said, and then all of a sudden the band goes shooting up, and you're like this gigantic festival band for the next 15 years, and you make a Christmas record, and everything's back up on top. He goes, how do you do that? Like, he goes, how do you call like this? You know, and I'm looking at my brother going, damn, wow. I never thought about that. And I said, well, I was born with asbestos underwear. And he said, I said, what do you mean? I said, well, entrepreneurs are born with asbestos underwear, meaning we can take the heat and we take the risks and we have big victories and we have big losses. I said, and the world needs people like me, and the world needs people like you. And that's the difference between the two of us.
Wow.
You're not better than me. I'm not better than you. We're just different in how we did it. So my life has been an entrepreneurial roller coaster. And, and then I developed prostate cancer. I don't know if you guys know this, but 6 years ago, I got prostate cancer. And now I do fundraising for prostate cancer. And I talk about it all the time because I'm trying to educate people. I'm trying to educate men. Don't take this for granted. You know, putting all the rock shit aside and all that other stuff aside, my daughter has an eye disease, raise money for that hospital. I had prostate cancer. You know, I had 2 heart operations. You know, that's where the real stuff comes in. And if you got real value on this earth, that becomes the priority is to try to help people out on a one-to-one basis. So yes,
Yeah.
you can stand on stage, and yes, you can sing, we're not going to take it. And yes, the glitz and the glam of all that's wonderful. But frankly, my appreciation for life and the experience of being a human being has been tempered by the reality of dealing with all these issues.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing, amazing
Testimony.
statement and
Yeah.
testimony. Yes.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? Like, we're all going to die someday. And we owe it to, I'm not, look, the record label, when they found out we were straight, they said, don't tell people we're straight, it'll ruin your reputation. It's for real. It's for real. And I said, that's really bizarre.
I believe
because-
that. Yeah.
I said, because if you're a politician and you're
Yeah.
found in a hotel room with a 13-year-old girl and cocaine, you're done. Like, you're done.
Right.
And if you're an athlete, you're found in a hotel room with a 13-year-old girl and cocaine, you're done. But in my world, if you're found in a hotel with a 13-year-old girl, they name an album after you and they give you a Grammy. Like, it's like we have stunted emotional growth is
Yeah.
encouraged in my world. Twisted Sister, D and me and Mendoza, no drinking, no drugs, no nothing. Like, we just ran a very straight business. And I refused to lie about it. I told the record label, I am not going to create an image where some kid's going to get wasted because he thinks he's doing me a favor or he's emulating me when he's not
right.
emulating me. I'm not going to lecture and say you shouldn't do it because I did it. I was a drug addict and I was a drug dealer. So I'm not going to say it's the worst thing in the world, but I will say that here's a warning. The reason why I don't do that shit is because I almost died. The reason why I don't do that shit is I was almost murdered on a number of occasions. The reason why I don't do that shit is because the 14th version of Twisted Sister is the one that made it, because we fired dozens of band members for being high and not being professional, because it's a hard business to be successful.
Yes.
And I have no tolerance. So when people said to me, how do you tour the world and not get high? It's very simple. We just didn't. It was just not part of our life. So when we're not part of that world, that means that when Motley Crue's invited me to a party, I'm not going because I got nothing in common to go to that party for. I don't drink and I don't do drugs.
Yeah.
So we stayed very insular as a band. So the deep, dark secret is, as crazy as the band's image was, it was to hide the fact that the band was very straight. And by the way, to Gene and Paul from Kiss, same thing. It's totally straight.
Yeah.
Hard-working guys, hard-working guys with a
Right.
vision. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't be a junkie and succeed, because we've seen enough of those guys who do.
Yeah.
But it's not my world. It's not the world that I come from, nor is it the world that I endorse, nor will I create an image like that for somebody else. I just tell them straight out.
Yeah.
I said, if you want to know how I did it because I worked hard.
Yeah.
I busted my ass. We worked really, really hard. 9,000 shows.
Wow.
40 countries around the world. Now I look at my wall, which you can't see the whole room, but there's 37 gold and platinum albums from 8 countries on my wall. And on days where I wonder what it was all about, I look at it and I go, well, I guess I did something. I guess I accomplished something, which is
Definitely.
it. So
Yeah.
I don't want to go on and make a maudlin lecture about it, but that's the truth of me.
No. And just to kind of add to that, JJ, I'm curious, is there anything out there that you haven't done that you desperately want to do?
Yeah, there is. First of all, the band never played Madison Square Garden because of we weren't.
Wow.
Because when we were scheduled to play there, we did something different. It never happened. So I think playing the Garden would be something to do. Would be kind of like cool.
Sure.
I never did it because I always just wanted
Such an iconic arena.
Because because also it takes me 5 minutes to get there by train, and my thing was to just take a train down and take the train back up to my house. Like, I told my
that would be cool.
I told my managers years ago, when the band really broke big and we were selling out Radio City Music Hall and all these venues, I said, never send a limo ever to my house. I'm taking the train. I said, I don't need people to know that someone in the building can do that. And number one, and number two, I'm a New York guy.
Yeah.
I want to take a train. And that's what I think that's like the funniest thing. We did 3 nights at Radio City. I took a train down, walked across 50th Street, walked back, done. Right.
Cool.
When we did the benefit for 9/11, we finished up, took my daughter, walked out the back door, walked over to 8th Avenue, got in a cab and came home, So that's it. Whether the band plays again or not, I don't know if that's matters or that is that important. I guess writing another book. I have an idea for a book, and I think maybe that is it. But frankly, I'm so grateful on a day-to-day basis that that I get up in the morning. They said to Keith Richards, "What's the difference between you and Mick Jagger?" And he said, Mick gets up every day and he goes, what am I doing today, 10 days from now, 10 years, 10 weeks from now, 10 months from now, 10 years from now? And Keith goes, I get up and I go, I got up this morning. I got up this morning. And I at this point in my life, I have a 30-year-old daughter and 2 grandkids, and I'm happy to get up every morning and try to be as positive as I can to the world. And if I'm overwhelmed, someone said to me, would you write a Beatle column? Have you ever interviewed anybody from the Beatles? And I said, well, there's only 2 left. There's Ringo and Paul. And if I had the opportunity to interview them, I'd have to really think about what I'd ask them, because everything has been asked, right? Every question's been asked, and they're probably so bored with it that it's hard to think but in my brain, I mentioned this to a friend of mine just this afternoon. Such a crazy thing that you asked me this question. This friend of mine who actually has access to him said to me, would you ever like to interview Ringo or Paul? And I went, yeah, I would. And they contacted somebody very close in the organization, and they said, JJ French like to have him on your podcast. And I went, okay. So that would be kind of cool. Why? Because that's the Beatles at the beginning. And look, how old are you guys? What are your ages?
64.
Yeah,
64.
56.
Okay. All right. So I'm 71, which means that I was 11 when I saw the Beatles on TV. And the catalyst of my dream was that night, February 9th. And how many guys my age have said that in interviews? They all say the same shit. Saw the Beatles on TV. So that's what I want to do. At the moment I was watching them on February 9th, 1964, if someone had put their hand on my shoulder that night and said, you know what? You will be a rock star one day. You'll have a gold record. And I would turn around and go, oh, like when? In 5 years? 6 years? And they would say, well, no, your first gold record will come 20 years and 6 months from today. I think I would have said, screw that. I think I just, 20 years and 6 months.
Right.
And yet 20 years and 6 months later, we're not going to take it. It went gold, right?
Yeah.
And now we are 40 years past that, and I'm still talking Twisted.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's
so
amazing.
it's a legacy, but I love my podcast. I don't know if you guys listen to it. My podcast is a lot of fun. It's the JJ French Connection. And I like talking to guys like you who want to talk this business because, you're a fan of it, and it's a passion that you guys have. So, I mean, you can ask me any question. Go ahead. Do you have any other question? Ask.
DH?
Well, one of the things I was kind of waiting on Randy, because I think Randy had something he wanted to ask. So I was kind of giving some time there.
Either one, whoever.
No, go ahead. Mine came in 2 forms, so go ahead. This is your show.
It's all good. Hey, it's our show. Good. We're all in this together.
No, we're all in this together.
One of the things, JJ, that I kind of on the height and all of the places you played, one of the things that I always wondered, especially with a band with your success, what are some of your favorite venues that you have played? And now, do you still prefer like the larger venues, or do you like the more intimate, smaller venues?
So I've been asked this question, like, what's the best show you ever played, or the greatest thing? And the best show in my mind that we ever did, and it was my opinion, not the opinion of the other guys in the band, had nothing to do with the album time, nothing to do with the big festivals, the big shows. It was a club called Speaks. We were the house band at a club in Island Park, New York. And it was a famous club. And to give you an idea of the atmosphere of the club, you guys saw Goodfellas, right?
Yes.
Many times, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Henry Hill worked in that club. You can imagine the owners of that club.
Right.
You can imagine the Jimmy the Shoe, Freddie the Fish, Johnny the Chair, like all those kind of
Choir boys.
So So we were one of the house bands in that room. And when you're in a band and you are playing every night and you're trying to get a record deal and you're trying to find a reason to feel good about possibly your future, yes, the band was playing at that point in front of 2,000, 3,000 people every night, 5 nights a week, and still we couldn't get a record deal, couldn't get arrested. One night we played Speaks. It was the 25th anniversary of rock and roll. It was a Dick Clark night. So I brought a little TV because I wanted to watch it before we went on stage, and it was an incredible history of rock and roll. And it led all the way up to Springsteen doing Rosalita at the bottom line. That was the last video it showed, right? But the thing is, you're in the dressing room, right, and you're watching Little Richard and Chuck Berry and James Brown and the Beatles and the Stones, and it's ginning up and it's ginning up, it's ginning up, and it's 2,000 people out there, and the promoter, Uncle Ralphie, comes in and goes, "Hey, what time you guys going on? It's freaking late," like that kind of shit. It's like talking like the Goodfellas guys. And I go, "Uncle Ralphie, I want to watch the rest of the show." He goes, "Well, if you go on at 11, you're gonna have to play till 12:30. Yeah, whatever. Okay, fine." So Rosalita ends it, and we walked on stage that night, and we put on a show that, in my mind, there was blood on the walls. In my mind, people lost their mind. In my mind, it justified every sacrifice I ever made. I walked off the stage. Some of my friends who were there that night walked up to me and said, "What the hell just happened?" And I said, "What just happened was validation for what I have been working for the last 6 years." I said, "That show will keep me sustained for a couple of years because we had such power." So that was just that little snapshot,
Wow.
okay? Which means nothing to 99.9% of the people who've ever seen the band. That means nothing, but to me, it means everything. Putting that aside, playing the biggest festivals, when you're playing in front of 110,000 people and they're singing "We're Not Going to Take It," it doesn't suck,
Right.
It's
Right.
And what happened is we as a band learned the art of performance technique. So we are one of maybe 30 groups in the world who a promoter will trust with 100,000 people. Not that many people can be trusted with 100,000 people.
Right.
And so it's an honor when the promoters in Germany and in Sweden and in France, whatever, says you headline over so-and-so, you headline over so-and-so, you guys close the festival, knowing that the whole reputation of the festival lies on you. If you suck, the festival sucks, promoter looks bad, the amount of pressure that's on. But you know what? We never had a problem because the band became fireproof, because we played so many shows under so many circumstances, we could make any adaptation you could possibly have, But there was a tipping point. If you go online and you go to the Tube show that we played in England that got us our record deal, if that didn't happen that night, you wouldn't be talking to me right now. There are tipping points along the way that were so important historically to the band that without those nights, things wouldn't have happened. So I would say that Night It Speaks was one. The TV show on the Tube, which is available, you can watch it on YouTube, say Twisters of the Tube. That performance got us our record deal. If we hadn't gotten a record deal that night, I shudder to think what would have happened because we'd been rejected so much. We were on our few. It was a Hail Mary night, right, for us. That was important. Coming back, the 9/11 show that we did, for
Yes.
the Widows and Orphans Fund, the New York City Police and Fire Department, the unions were crying, and we were all crying, right? You can imagine we were crying.
Sure.
That night, when no other metal band was hired to play the Garden, and Eddie Trunk, the heavy metal DJ, said,
Sure.
"We're going to do a metal night." Because metal bands want to participate and they don't want us at the Garden. So we sold out the Hammerstein Ballroom with Anthrax and Ace Frehley and Overkill and Sebastian Bach. And that was the night that Twisted came back after 12 years of dormancy. That night is available on DVD. It's an emotional night for us. All of those shows we did in England, the live shows that have all been memorialized on album, are important and signposts for the band. What makes a night special is not the numbers; it's that intangible atmosphere. Brian Johnson came out on stage at a show in England and did a whole lot of Rosie with us. Man, you want to talk about fun? I mean, we hadn't played a whole lot of Rosie in 20 years in the bars, and he shows up. "Hey, laddie, you want to do an AC/DC song?" We used to do tons of AC/DC. We said, "Sure." How about a whole lot of? We hadn't played it in 15 years. Went on stage, boom, 20,000 people. I have it on video, losing their mind. Brian Johnson losing his mind. He comes off stage and he says, "That was the greatest reaction I ever heard." And I looked at Brian and I said, "Brian, I love you, but fuck you. Like, don't tell me that. It's nice that you said that, but I'm sorry. AC/DC is one of the great bands of all time. They're one of the few bands that I will stand for 2 hours to watch.
Right.
It's much fun. Great band." So anyway, that was a special night. The last night we played our last show in Mexico with Kiss, that last night. That was a special night. The night that we decided not to wear makeup, that story is pretty funny, right? So we're playing a festival in Holland, and it was an amazing festival called the Arrow Festival. Think about this. In one afternoon, so it's 79 euros. This is what you got: REO Speedwagon, Kansas, Motorhead, Journey, Def Leppard, Whitesnake, Twisted Sister, and Kiss in one afternoon.
Wow.
Okay, in a
Wow.
big
I
field.
cannot imagine.
In a big field, two
Yeah,
stages,
yeah.
one on each side. So every band set up perfect timing.
Yeah.
No, everyone's set up one after the. And we're supposed to go on at 4 p.m. And D, it turns out, was going to take the last plane out of New York at JFK the night before because he's a lead singer and they like to, what's the difference between a lead singer and a terrorist? You can negotiate with a terrorist, right? So D's like, so D's he won't take the last flight out. So he's at Kennedy Airport. He pops an Ambien, goes to sleep, wakes up 7 hours later, and says to the guy next to him, "Man, that flight felt great. Didn't even feel like the plane was moving." And the guy said, "It didn't. We've been on a weather hold for 7 freaking hours."
Oh,
Oh
So
my
now the plane
gosh.
arrives. Now the plane arrives in Amsterdam at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the field is 2 hours away by car, and there's no way he's going to make it. And the promoter, think about this: you got REO Speedwagon, Kansas. Everyone's playing on the
Yeah.
hour, and our slot is 4 to 5. And the promoter said, "Well, if you're not on stage at 4, you've forfeited all your money and all that." Now, meanwhile, we're standing around in t-shirts and jeans because we figured we're not going on, right? We figured we're not going on. And D lands, and our tour manager decides to fly him via helicopter if we can get a special permit to land behind the stage. But when
Crazy.
you rent a helicopter in Holland, you rent the helicopter in Holland. Okay. And it was so small, it wouldn't fit D's luggage. So the helicopter lands behind the stage at 5 minutes to 4. And we're all in t-shirts and jeans. And so is D. And he goes, "Well, let's go up on stage." And we're playing with Kiss that night. So we thought this was going to be like our big thing. So we went up on stage in t-shirts and jeans, no makeup, nothing. And the next day in the national newspaper, they did a great story on the whole show. Every band's great. The only photo was us. And it said,
wow.
"This was great. This was
That's
great."
awesome.
Bah, 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 bah. The only band to provide a quasi-religious experience was Twisted Sister. Those kinds of nights
Wow.
are the kind of nights that
Isn't that something?
you
What a
remember
story.
because of all the crazy shit. And let me tell you, because the band had played thousands of shows, you just adapt to what you got to adapt to, right? The art of playing to thousands of people is an art. And when you learn it, then you can replicate it. I'm proud of the fact that we can play to 100,000 people. I could be asleep and 5 minutes later be on stage for 100,000 people and play without thinking twice about it, but only because I've done it thousands of times.
Sure.
So that kind of experience is wonderful. Those are the kind of shows that matter. South America, when the kids are singing not your lyrics, when they're singing your guitar solos, it's freaking crazy.
Wow.
But in Buenos Aires, why do you think AC/DC's DVDs in Buenos Aires, Iron Maiden's DVDs in Buenos Aires, Madonna's DVDs? Those fans are freaking insane. And they were singing my guitar solo. I was trying to play my solo, which I don't play note for note. I'm like kind of a freewheeling guy, every time's a little different. Don't go to the front of the stage, man, unless you're playing note for note. Who the hell sings guitar solos? I mean, when you witness that, you go, or playing in Bolivia where we couldn't breathe because you're 12,000 feet above sea level, and you plane lands and you can't get out of your seat because you can't breathe, and there's a hospital at the airport, and they put an oxygen mask on your face, and they drive you to the hotel with oxygen masks, and you're in a hotel with oxygen masks, and they get you to the stage, which is a soccer stadium, and you're playing in front of 30,000 kids in a soccer stadium, and you can't breathe. The night before that show, I was in Chile, and the guy says, "Where are you playing tomorrow?" I said, "We're playing in La Paz." And he goes, this is what he says to me. He goes, "We're not gonna take it." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You'll find out tomorrow, man." Well, we're on stage, and there's the microphone, and this is me trying to get to the mic. "We're not gonna take it." You don't, the promoter said, "Well, man, maybe we can help you out. We'll give you cocaine." I said, "Listen, pal." I said, "Number one, we don't do that shit. But number two, we're 60 years old. If we did coke, we would die of a freaking heart attack." I said, "Are you crazy?" And he goes, "That's too bad. It's $6 a gram." And I go, I guess that's really a tragedy to many people, but that doesn't help me because we don't do that shit." And it was horrible. It was horrible because we couldn't put on the show we wanted to, and yet we got front and back page of the national newspapers. Said it was one of the best shows they ever saw. How could you think that was a good show? We couldn't breathe. We couldn't move on stage because it takes a week to acclimate yourself at 12,000 feet. Again, you remember that shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You remember those
Definitely.
shows, right? You remember
Right.
them for their weirdness. You remember them for their specialness. And then you are aware of them because you are so good at what you do that you adapt yourself to have to make sure the show's out. Because we're so connected to our fans. We want to give them what they want. I hate going to see a band that like reinterprets its music and messes around with it. I'm not a fan of that. Some people are. I am not.
Yeah.
99% of the people that want to go to a show want to hear your hits and they want to hear you play them right. That's the
right.
truth. That's the
That-
truth.
Right.
99% of them want to hear him. You go see
right.
Bob Dylan, you don't know what the hell he's doing.
That's right.
I went to see Dylan. I went to see Dylan with one of his producers, and he's 3 songs in. I'm going, what the hell is this guy singing? You know? And then somewhere in the middle of a song, I heard Tangled Up in Blue. I went, oh, that's Tangled Up in Blue. Like, he didn't give a shit. He just didn't care. Like, you know, and I'm not of that. Twisted Sister is, you want these 17 songs? You want them played like they're on the record? That's why we're successful. We give you the 17 songs. People say, you sick of playing them? No, I'm not sick of playing them. You want to hear We're Not Going to Take It? I'm not working in a freaking warehouse. I'm playing We're Not Going to Take It and loving it.
Right.
And absolutely loving it
Yeah,
because you're
yeah.
loving it.
Yeah.
And I'm an entertainer. You
There you
know,
go.
so many bands, you know, you show up late, you go 2 hours late, like, you know, some bands, I won't be nameless. Never us. Contract says you're on stage at 9:30. We're on stage at 9:30. Says you're on stage at 9:45. You're on stage at 9:45. The only time we're not on stage in the contract time is because the promoter wasn't ready or something else. We ran our business like a clock and we treated our fans with respect because 99% okay, so there's a tiny group goes, hey man, like why don't you do this blah blah from your first record that nobody bought or something. I would, but you know what? That's 4 minutes of time that the rest of the people don't know. And I'd rather play to them. My responsibility is to them.
Yeah.
You know, and we adhere to that philosophy. We do.
And I
Fantastic.
think that's one of the coolest things because for me, you know, that's what I'm looking for. I'm like
Yeah.
you. I don't want to go see a band and then they do a different take on a song. I came there to hear the music
I hate that.
that I'm
I
used
hate
to.
that stuff.
So yeah, to hear you say that, I was like, you know, that's
That's
exactly,
refreshing.
That's how
Yeah,
I feel when I go
absolutely.
to a concert. I want to hear the
Don't
song
change
the way
the
it's supposed
don't
to be.
don't change the damn words.
Right.
That ain't what I
Or
want
the
to hear.
arrangement, or make
Yeah.
a big jam in the middle of it, or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what, man? No,
Play it like it's
play
supposed
it
to be
like
played.
it's on the goddamn record for
Yeah.
crying out
Yeah.
loud. You know, I
Amen.
mean, I'm sorry, and that's like old school, and some people agree with it, and some people don't. But I would say you can never make a mistake if that's your philosophy. You
That's
can
right.
never make a mistake. Ever.
Absolutely.
And if you ever
I
say,
agree.
I'm sick of doing it, I'm bored doing it, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing it anymore.
And
But
I
Don,
think
Don Henley from the Eagles, when someone said, are you sick of playing Hotel California? He said, dude, I have an unbelievable ability to repeat myself. You want to hear that song? That means a lot to you. You want to hear it really done well? I'm going to give it to you the way you want to hear it, really done well, because that night that you're seeing me is the one night you're seeing me.
That's right.
Forget that I've done it 1,000 times. That's the one night. If I suck that night, I have made your night a drag. Now, you can say, well, you have another night to recover from it. I don't buy that shit. I buy it. That's the night. That's the performance. You spent X amount of money on a ticket, parking, babysitters. You understand all that shit, right?
Yeah.
All that stuff you do
Absolutely.
that costs you money. We go for that sacrifice on your end. We're going to make you walk out of there with a smile on your face. And you know what? I'm not going to tell you we're the best band on any of these festivals, but I will tell you that we're so good that we'll make you think we're the best band on those festivals, right? And our attitude with all these other bands is if you're better than us, blow us off the stage. You know why? Because that means the people have gotten a better show. If you're better than us,
There you go.
blow us. We'll give you all the lights, give you all the PA. Come on, man. Come on. Bring it on. Take us out. Because if you take us out, you've given the audience even a better show. So that's how we feel. So whether it's Iron Maiden, Slayer, I mean, we've headlined with these bands, over these bands, under these bands. Most bands do not like to follow us because it's a drag to follow us. We really drain the audience with their energy. But I have no problem with a band that's 100% professional, giving it its all and doing its best, because that's what you're trying to do for the audience. It sounds so square and old school, you know, but that's the truth. That's what we learned in the bars. We learned discipline. When
Yeah.
I teach my teaching thing, the TWISTED, the last two letters are excellence and discipline. And so what you're seeing on stage is disciplined chaos. We know exactly what we're doing. And we know how to take you from point A to point B and to make you go at the end of the day, wow, that was freaking great. And that's all that matters.
That's right. Randy?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, JJ, what probably kind of a sophomoric question, but I love asking it of artists, especially guitarists. How it's a two-parter. How many guitars do you own? And actually, it's a four-parter. Is there a guitar that you consider to be the holy grail, and do you own it, or does Joe Bonamassa own it?
Well, Joe Bonamassa just bought one of my guitars.
Seriously,
Yeah,
wow!
he was here in this room 2 weeks ago and bought one of my guitars.
I'll be darned.
And tomorrow, and he's also on my podcast. But do you know who Tommy Emmanuel is? Who's one?
Oh
of the,
yeah, big fan
Tom-
of his. He's
Tommy's doing my
a
podcast.
Nashvilleian.
Tom is doing my podcast tomorrow.
Very cool. I've interviewed him 2 or
wow,
3
gotta check
times.
that out. Yeah.
I love him. So okay, so I own currently 60. I've owned 1,000 maybe, maybe. I have 60 left. I play Epiphones live because they're great guitars, and if they're stolen or if my roadie's having a fight with his girlfriend, he breaks it, I don't care. It does, you know what I mean? It's like a $300 guitar, which happens to play great, and it's wonderful. I don't take any of my super valuable guitars out. But the holy grail of my collection, meaning the one that more affects my heart than any other guitar, the one that I will probably be buried with, happens to be right here, and it's a
Nice.
1954 Les Paul Jr.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
I have a bunch of these, but this particular Les Paul Jr. I bought for $325 in 1984, and it just happens to be like my favorite guitar. So
Very cool.
So this little baby, which was $99 new in 1954. I mean, think about it. It is now 70 years old.
Wow.
Very cool.
Amazing.
That is cool.
And
That
the
is
reason
so
why I
amazing.
play this guitar is for one very good reason. Because in 1969, I walked into a little club called Longano's. I was in an Italian restaurant on 70th Street and saw Mountain play. And that is
Leslie West.
from
Yeah.
1969, the night after I saw
Wow.
I saw Mountain's second show. This was Mountain's third show at Woodstock the next night. He announced he couldn't do an encore because he was going upstate to play a concert, and it was Woodstock. And so this is him at Woodstock playing a junior, wearing the same clothes he wore the night before when I saw him on 70th Street and Broadway with Mountain. And that's why I own juniors, because of Leslie.
Leslie was among my first interviews when I launched Boomerosity. And I interviewed him like 3 times, and really sad when he passed. Yeah.
Leslie was
Great
such a
guitar.
sweet guy. He was really sweet. We knew him really well. And he came down to Radio City Music Hall during our sound check, and he brought a Tom Scholl's distortion box with him. This is 1986.
Mhm.
And he said, guys, you want to hear this? Is amazing. And we were finishing sound check, and my other guitar player said, play it out of my rig, play it out of my rig. So Leslie wired it up, and you have to picture this, Radio City Music Hall, we're playing, that weekend, which is on 50th and 6th Avenue. Luckily, it's on 50th Street because 48th Street, the music row is just around the corner. And Leslie plugs his Tom Scholl's thing in. Whatever he did, he screwed it up and he hit a chord and he blew Eddie's entire rig.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And the whole rig blows up on the stage of Radio City at soundcheck. And all Leslie said was, well, did you hear how it sounded before it blew up? It was, hear that? Did you hear that A? That was the best fucking A I ever heard in my life. But luckily, 48th Street was around the corner. We called our friend at Sam Ash or whatever, and he wheeled over a couple of Marshalls like right away. But Leslie was great. It was wonderful. And then his brother owned restaurants in Manhattan, and I was eating at a restaurant that his brother owned one day, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden a roll comes flying in and hits me in the face. Leslie with another tip, he goes, hey, JJ. My brother owns this place. You can't throw me out. I went, okay. Thanks.
I've got a very cool picture. He invited me to Hippie Fest, and he was part of that, traveling menagerie of artists. And This was in Dallas when I lived there, and my daughter had the sense of mind to snap a picture of Leslie and I while we're in deep conversation backstage. And that was before he lost his leg, and it was just like a couple of days before he went to the 2009 Woodstock and got married. So anyway, I cherish that picture, and I said, interviewed him 2 or 3 times, and what a rock and roll treasure he was.
Most of the guys I met in this business on a one-to-one basis have been fine.
Yeah.
I never spent any real time with Clapton. I was just interviewed. I just was introduced to him once at a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame dinner, and I didn't know if I wanted to talk to him or not, because I heard he wasn't a particularly nice guy. But someone introduced me to him, and I looked at him. I said, I just need you to know that the reason why I play the way I play is because of the way you played on the Blues Breakers record. That has made my. I said, Mike Bloomfield from Paul Butterfield Blues Band, you and Albert King defined my guitar style. And I said, you're playing on the Blues Breakers record, defined it, and you know it because it's a famous story. The way he sounded on that record. And I said, I really want to thank you, but I'm sure you've heard that a million times. And you know what he said to me? He said, it's true, I have heard it a million times, but all that matters is that it mattered to you. And I went,
wow.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Like, very, very, very cool. Okay, great. We lived at Jimmy Page's house for 3 months doing Can't Stop Rock and Roll, and Jimmy didn't show up. He was busy getting busted for heroin at the time. It's well known. It's not like I'm talking out of school. He got busted for heroin possession. We didn't meet him till many years later. And that was interesting because at the time that we were recording that album, they were remastering the Coda album. So they had all the 2-inch reels from Zeppelin's albums were in this room that we were in. You can imagine a bunch of guys from Long Island, who did Zeppelin covers. We're like davening in front of the boxes, like we're kissing like Jews at the Wailing Wall. Oh my God, communications breakdown, Black Dog, Whole Lotta Love. Oh my God, this is it. This is the shit. Oh my God,
you've hit the grail.
This is the shit right here. So that was, and then I had dinner with Robert and got to know Jimmy, and those guys are all fine, but they answer the same questions all the time, and you don't want to bother people. And I live in Manhattan, and people don't bother me. For the most part, they really don't. Although I'll tell you one story, and then I got to go. But this is a really funny story. When people say to me, you play thousands of nights in bars, does anything stand out? And I go, yeah, one particular night we were being heckled at this little bar in White Plains. And this guy kept yelling, you're not loud enough. And the club was so tiny. We're playing through triple Marshall stacks. It's fucking so loud. I can't believe it. Guy goes, you're not loud enough. You're not loud enough. So I said, okay, asshole, come here. And he comes up on stage. And when he gets on stage, he sees me, D, and Mark are wearing 6-inch heels. So we're towering over him. He's like, I really love you guys. And I said, it's not loud enough. He goes, no. So I took his head and I put it in the Marshall stack. And I hit a chord and I go, loud enough? He goes, no. So I said, tape him to the Marshall. So they taped him like Jesus Christ to the Marshall stacks. There's no shit. They taped the guy with his arms out like this for the whole set. And I keep turning around thinking he's going to be screaming, but he looks like he's having a great time. Like this is like the best part of his life. So anyway, we cut him down. And for like 30, 40 years, I'm always saying to myself, whatever happened to that guy? Whatever happened?
At the school for the deaf.
Right.
That guy's still alive. And a couple of years ago, I'm walking across Grand Central Station, and someone recognizes me. And they yell out across the floor. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Grand Central, but it's big, marbly, And I go, hey, JJ French. And I went, okay. All right. What's up? He goes, hey, man. Remember that night at 4.5? You taped that guy in the amplifier? Yeah, was it you? He goes, no, that was my best friend. And I went, is he still alive? He goes, is he still alive? He still tells people that was the greatest night of his life. I said, is he married with children? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and he tells people that's still the greatest night of his life. Tell him to go to a therapist. You need therapy, motherfucker.
Oh my!
Those
JJ, it's been a pleasure, man.
Wow, yes, JJ. Thank
what
you
a
so
treat!
Much. What?
Hey,
an
give everybody, talk to them about how to follow you, how to catch your podcast and your book as well. Amazon, right?
The book Twisted Business is available on Amazon. It's just
Gotcha.
Twisted Business. You can do that. The podcast is the JJ French Connection. That's
Mhm.
JayJayFren. Say JJ French Connection, like French Connection movie, French Connection.
Okay.
Beyond the Music, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, easily accessible. I've got great people. This week, I'm going to have Tommy Emmanuel as a guest tomorrow, but I've got hundreds of great guitar players and actors and authors, and even my urologist who treated my prostate cancer is on it, and my cardiologist who treated
There
my
you
heart
go.
operation is on it. It's a wonderful podcast. I do motivational speaking engagements, and if you want to reach out to me that way, I'll give you an email. It's Ask JJ, Ask JJYJY, Ask JJTS, Ask JJTS, like in Twisted Sister or Taylor Swift or Times Square, either way, at gmail.com, and you can reach me that way. So that's easy enough. And I'm on Cameo for people who like personal, greetings, birthdays, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, Christmas, Hanukkah. We do everything. Like, we're just general greetings. Some people just pay just to say, I have a question to ask you. And they ask me, and I do that.
Yeah.
So I'm on Cameo at JJ French, at JayJayFrench. Oh, and we have a new album, which is the Under the Blade 40th anniversary vinyl, which is out now.
Wow.
And in October, the 40th anniversary of Stay Hungry will be coming out. We're going to add 2 tracks on the original album that were made for the album that never made the album. That will be on the album.
Okay.
And we're going to have a second album of the live MTV concert that was never available as audio only. But for those of you who saw us on MTV when the album came out 40 years ago and watched Live from San Bernardino, which was a famous live show, we stripped the audio from that. And it's going to be on the second vinyl album. And we all know vinyl is very popular again. People are buying records.
Yes.
It'll also be available, obviously, streaming and CD. So there's a lot of
fantastic.
information right there, to kind of absorb. So that's the way, that's all. I'm jjfrench.com, twistedsister.com.
Yeah.
We're all over everything,
Absolutely.
Instagram, and you name it, I'm on it. And thank you guys.
Hey,
JJ,
our
we
pleasure.
really
The
appreciate
best
it.
to your
We
family.
appreciate it. Yes,
God bless,
yes.
man.
Thank you.
All
And by the way, to my buddies, so to Dee, to Mark, to to Dee, to Mark, to Eddie Ojeda, and to the dearly missed AJ Perro, who passed away in 2015.
Yeah.
Is a brother to us, and also, by the way, to Mike Portnoy for filling in and doing such a phenomenal job after AJ passed. I want to just shout out to my guys, because without them there's nothing. I mean, they did the sacrifices, and then the fans were the ones that benefited from the sacrifices that they made, and without them there wouldn't be us either. So I think we've covered.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Randy Patterson, Boomerosity.
Thank
Check
you for
out his
joining us tonight, Randy. Yes.
great stuff. We appreciate you being on board tonight, man.
It was fun. And the cookies were great. So
There you go.
Yeah.
We're gonna get those cookies to you.
And just remember what the Brooklyn alphabet is, guys. You know what that is? Fucking
No.
A, fucking B, fucking C, fucking D.
There you go.
There's my great parting words.
There you go.
Fucking alphabet, guys.
Ladies and
JJ
gentlemen.
French, Randy Patterson, DH. I'll see you tomorrow, brother.
Yes. all
Another
right.
great show.
Hey,
Catch
great
us
show,
next week
folks.
here in Nashville for another one.
Yes. Again, JJ, Randy, thank you both for joining us tonight.
We
Folks, that's
appreciate you
gonna do
guys.
it for another episode of D&D Dynamite 80s. Remember, you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker Radio, Radio Republic, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, on the TikTok, Facebook, website, Google Podcast, everywhere. D&D Dynamite 80s. Again, we'd like to thank our guest, JJ. We really appreciate you joining us. Randy, we really appreciate you coming in and co-hosting. You guys, another great show. As I always end off with something before I throw it over to DC, folks, remember, it doesn't cost anything to be kind, so always be kind to each other.
Amen,
DC?
brother. Amen. As DC always kind of closes out the show for you, keep playing those 80s, and we'll see you next week, guys.
See you next week, folks.